What's going on, everyone? This is Kevin here, coming at you with my hands-on and first impressions video of the Samsung Galaxy A04. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, the Galaxy A04 was actually launched back in October of 2022, so I'm pretty late on covering this one, but at the same time, I have had it kind of sitting around in the office. It's been a little bit of a lower priority, but I did still want to get to it, so here it is. Now, before I get too far into things here with the phone, I do want to show you what comes included in the box, but also keep in mind that I have linked to this device in the video description, so if you do happen to be interested in it, then definitely take a look. But in the box, we're getting some literature. We're also getting a USB wall adapter. Now, this one is not for the US, so I can't use that here. And keep in mind too that the A04 is actually also not officially sold in the US either. We're also getting a USB-C cable for charging and data transfer, and then we're getting a SIM card removal tool. Now with the Samsung Galaxy A04, we're getting a very large 6.5-inch display. Now this display is PLS LCD, and it does feature a 720p panel. So no 1080p display here, but I wouldn't really expect to find that with such an affordable smartphone. Now the PPI with the device is 270. We're getting a 20:9 aspect ratio, so a more narrow but taller form factor, and we're getting an 81.3% screen to body ratio. So overall, pretty small bezels with a slightly thicker bottom bezel. And then up top here, we do have a notch, which does feature the phone's 5-megapixel front-facing camera. Now definitely stay tuned for my full review of this phone here on the channel, as I'll be showing you a variety of different photo and video samples from all the various cameras that we're getting. But internally here with the device, we're getting 64 gigs of storage, along with microSD card expansion. So 64 gigs of storage for such an affordable smartphone is really nice to see. That's certainly quite a bit. Now I do know quite a few people who can easily fill up 64 gigs, so I suppose you might need more. I know for me personally, I need more like 256 gigs to actually use a phone comfortably, but I am also a full-time content creator, so different people have different needs. Now in addition to that though, this phone is compatible with microSD card expansion, so if you do happen to have a microSD card, you can always put it in the phone to offload photos and videos, for example, to free up some of that internal space. Now with this device, there's no wireless charging, and there's also no fingerprint sensor. So keep that in mind. If you are someone who likes to use your fingerprint to get into your phone, you cannot do that here. Thankfully though, there is at least face unlock to access the device, so that is better than nothing. Now with this phone, we are getting a dual camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera for portrait mode. So that is a nice thing to see, that even on a phone that's this low end, we are still getting portrait mode, and we are getting that with both the rear and front cameras. Now here's how things look on the camera app on the device. This is the main rear camera right now. Then from here, we can switch over to portrait mode to get those nice blurred out backgrounds. There's also a blur slider too, so if you want less blur, you can decrease that, or if you want more blur, you can adjust it accordingly. With this phone, we actually can take 1080p video with both the front and rear cameras, so that's at least good. And then heading over to the More tab, there's a few other features like a Pro mode, panorama, food mode, and hyperlapse, but in general, it's a pretty bare bones setup here. We can also flip around to the front-facing camera to take selfies. I do appreciate that there is a group selfie option, so it crops things out a little bit, and then you can take portrait selfies too, and you do have that slider to adjust the amount of blur. Now, with this front camera, you can see it did apply a filter to my face. I'm not a big fan of that, so I am going to turn that off here, and I'm going to set that to off. There we go. So definitely you might want to do some customizations in the camera app itself when you get the phone, so just remember that. But overall, for a phone in this segment, you really shouldn't expect to get too much at all. Now, as far as performance goes, I will say, this phone has been very slow so far. So if you are someone who wants a faster phone, maybe you're disappointed that your current phone is very slow and you want a real upgrade to that, then this phone probably will not be that upgrade. But on the other hand, if you want a device that's really bare bones, that you're pretty much going to use for phone calls, text messages, maybe occasional web browsing and email, and occasional social media, then this phone probably will be fine for you. But if you are someone who does use your smartphone even a decent amount, you probably will quickly become very frustrated with this phone not really being that fast. But with this phone, we are getting 4 gigabytes of RAM along with the MediaTek Helio P35 processor. Now, this phone is not compatible with 5G networks, so keep that in mind. It is only 4G LTE. So if you do want to use your carrier's latest and greatest network, which I'm assuming is 5G, you cannot do that here. And certainly when doing certain things on this device, you can experience some lag. Now, navigating around the home screen and going to the app drawer, that's pretty smooth, but once you get a little bit deeper into various apps, you will notice that this phone is very slow. Now, I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 6, and here are the scores that I got from that test. So I got a single core score of 176, and a multi-core score of 838. So what I recommend doing is running this test on your current phone, and then compare your scores to these scores to get a better idea of how the A04 stands up to your current device. Because you certainly won't want to upgrade to this phone if it ends up actually being a downgrade. Now with this phone, we are getting a very large 5000 milliamp hour internal battery. And that's certainly a great thing, as you should expect to get at least a full day of usage out of the phone on a single charge, if not multiple days. So nothing better than having a phone that actually lasts for a little while and doesn't run out of battery really quickly. I also appreciate too that we are getting USB-C. I know that's a feature that really should be expected on any device, but at the same time, there are still some lower end Android phones that have micro USB, so I'm glad that USB-C is present here. Unfortunately though, there is no NFC with this device, so if you do want to use your phone for tap and pay at a grocery store, or really any store for that matter, you can't do that here. And that's a feature that I do find myself using quite a bit and I'm a big fan of. But at the same time, you don't really find NFC with lower end phones. But taking a closer look at the hardware of this phone, despite it being lower end, it actually does feel surprisingly high quality. It certainly doesn't feel cheap. The device is made completely of plastic besides the display, which is made of glass, and it does feature a glossy finish. Now, I'm not really a fan of this finish because it picks up a lot of fingerprints, as you can see, so the phone doesn't really look that great. And since the phone is made of plastic, I do recommend pairing it up with some sort of case so that the phone doesn't get scratched up as time goes on. But taking a look at the left side of the device, we have the slot for the micro SD card and SIM card. Then on the right side, we have volume up, volume down, and the power button. Then up top here, we have the noise canceling microphone. And then on the bottom of the phone, we have the 3.5mm headphone jack, microphone, USB-C port for charging and data transfer, and the speaker. Then on the back of the device, we have the Samsung logo, camera module, flash, and that's pretty much it. But one thing that maybe is a little bit cheap is the material on the back, just because you can see around the camera module here, the plastic kind of bends a little bit. I'm sure it's meant to be that way, but it just doesn't really make the phone look that high-end or premium, which makes sense because it's not a high-end phone. But overall, I wouldn't necessarily recommend getting the Galaxy A04, even after this kind of first impressions video, and I really want to use the phone a bit more before I create my review, but really, just from what I'm seeing so far, this phone isn't really that worth getting, especially considering that there's a lot of other affordable smartphones that offer more features, and really, if you're going to go for this device and get it brand new with it being lower end, I think you're better off going the used route or refurbished route with a phone that's slightly upmarket in comparison. You're going to have a much better experience and you're not going to deal with a device that's pretty slow here. That being said though, if you do find yourself still interested in the Galaxy A04, I do plan on creating more content about this phone here on the channel into the future, so definitely subscribe and be on the lookout for that content. But overall, I'm really curious to know what you think. Do you think this phone is even worth considering for anybody at any price point? Or do you feel like you may as well go for a used device or refurbished device instead? Definitely when you get into this segment of the smartphone market, you have to make some of those tough choices like that, so I really want to know what you think. But this concludes my hands-on and first impressions video of the Samsung Galaxy A04. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, but this is Kevin here, and I will see you in the next one. Take care and have a great rest of your day.